In 1999, the land care coordinators of Kojonup, Broomhill and Cranbrook were successful in obtaining Natural Heritage Trust funding for a 2-year project to increase native vegetation and biodiversity and raise awareness of sustainable agricultural practices in the Upper Frankland Gordon River catchment. The project was funded by the Natural Heritage Trust in January 2000. The project area included the shires of Kojonup, Broomhill, Tambalup, Cranbrook, Frankland and Rocky Gully. The main thrust of the project was to fence off and replant areas that were in need of revegetation due to excess grazing, waterlogging, erosion or salinity. This in turn would help protect the Frankland and Gordon rivers from further degradation. Farmers with areas of bush that were in good condition were encouraged to enter into covenant agreements with the National Trust, CALM or AgWA. The latter provided management assistance to the farmers, and extra funding of $1,200 per kilometre was available from the Natural Heritage Trust for fencing. Areas of healthy fenced bush have been used by Nindathana Seed Nursery to collect native local seed species to provide seed for the direct seeding in the project. With over $43,000 worth of seed going into the area, it has been a challenge for Nindathana to collect, smoke and distribute the seed to farmers to be planted during the winter months. Farmers were actively encouraged to direct seed local species to ensure a return to a healthier, more natural habitat for local wildlife. The Chatfield planter was purchased in the winter of 2002 with the help of funds from the Lotteries Commission and the Gordon Reed Foundation. The Chatfield is a one-pass operation for planting seeds and seedlings. It will first scalp the soil to remove the seedbed. Then it rips and mounds the area. The seed falls onto the area through 2 tubes and is pressed into the soil by a press wheel. At the same time, the planter can plant seedlings through a revolving hand planter. Both the seed rate and the seedling rates can be adjusted to suit the location requirements. The Chatfield can be used either high in the landscape or lower down on creek lines. For seeding, only 1 operator is needed. But for seedlings, 2 are needed as the seedlings are placed on shelves around the edges of the planter and a person sits on a seat in the Chatfield and places a seedling in the revolving hand. Over 369,000 seedlings have also been planted during the project. The 2 main nurseries, Bandicoot and Blythes, managed to grow the local species for farmers. Species included eucalyptus, myrtles, hakeas, melaleucas, acacias, atriplex, sedges and junceas. Farmers could make their own selections, or Wendy Bradshaw, the Bush Care Officer, would customise a species list that would include over 34 species of ground covers, shrubs and trees. Included in the lists were bright flowering plants, attractive to a wide variety of local birds and insects. The first year of the project was, unfortunately, very dry, and the following year there was a grasshopper plague. But 2001 was kind to the seedlings and most farmers had a 70 to 90% success rate. Farmers have been encouraged to plant corridors so that the tree lines connect to creeks, gullies, rivers, road verges, nature reserves and remnant bush. Some of the farms have been able to connect with their neighbours' bush corridors, thereby building an extensive corridor system. This has been successful in helping birds to relocate in the landscape and create a healthier farming situation, with wildlife returning to areas that were once saline and dying.
This is the main branch of the Slab Hut Brook, which runs into the Gordon River, which runs into the Frankland, part of that catchment. This is the minor creek, which is somewhat degenerated, that runs back through the edge of this patch of bush, back up here. The project you're going to look at is where we've been replanting and reseeding and some drainage involved with this creek. It also forms part of our conservation plan in that it becomes part of the corridor system. So it links where the road's been reseeded, it links the Slab Hut Brook with this creek into this piece of bush. We've fenced off this corridor here. We've also fenced off this old road which we own, which takes us on to the next part of bush we own, which has always been fenced off. It hasn't been stocked at any time. And at the end of that, with our neighbour Nick Burgess, we've fenced and planted an area here, another corridor which links us into the next neighbour's bush. The feeder creek behind us is part of the slab hut system. It runs into the slab hut just down here about 500 or 600 metres, which then runs into the Gordon and the Frankland as part of the catchment. We started on this area in 2000 with the NHD funding, which provided the fencing and the seedlings you see along the edge where it was mounted along the edge. We pegged the bottom of the area to put the drain through, and took out all the dead yate trees that had died due to salinity and also waterlogging. With funding for seed, we've been in and planted Casuarina obesa and Melaleuca cutellaris seeds into there in May 2000. We estimate that seed will take probably 5 years for full germination. We've had a patchy germination so far. You need to have a bit of a look around to find it, but it's amazing how much is there already. Since then we've gone in with further seedling plantings around the edge, using salt-tolerant species along the very saline areas, and then once we've got out to our mounted areas, we've put in yates and some of the other trees that grew here.
By protecting native vegetation on farms, creeklines and rivers benefit also. Small lakes and swamps, once fenced, become part of the nesting and breeding grounds for many waterbirds, helping to keep wetlands in balance. These swamps are connected to a calm reserve of 40 hectares by a 4-kilometre fenced corridor that includes a survey road and another 20-hectare farm reserve. Not only does this provide a habitat for over 124 species of birds, but it also acts as a windbreak, protecting the sheep and pasture, which in turn improves farm production.
Well, this property is split in half by a string of swamps, 3 of which have been fenced before, but what we wanted to do with the ones that weren't fenced in between was to make a wildlife corridor. So what we've done with this project is to fence in between and plant seedlings to regenerate the area, to encourage various birds, native birds and animals back into the area. We've got some fairly rare water birds which we want to encourage to increase in number as well.
In addition to monitoring wildlife populations, monitoring of water levels by farmers has been important to determine the success of land care practices.
This site was chosen about 40 hectares, a little under, because of increasing salinisation in the lower part. We set it up with surface drainage to facilitate crops and also the early health of the lucerne. Lucerne was planted after top dressing with 1 tonne of lime to bring the pH to an acceptable level. Another tonne of lime was put in this latterly this year. The paddock has been in for 12 months and in that time has had the equivalent of 6,000 sheep grazing for 105 days. The piezometric readings on the slopes have shown a steady decline. This one was 1.35 below the ground, and despite the fact we're now in August with quite a good winter, it is now to 2 metres below the ground, which is very heartening from the point of the effectiveness of the lucerne planting.
The Upper Frankland Gordon River Catchment Project has seen significant changes in land care practices on many farms in the region. The importance of managing salinity and waterlogging in productive agricultural areas is absolutely vital to agriculture's long-term viability, and it is hoped that adoption of practices such as those used by Bill, Phil and John are taken up by the wider farming community.